Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Inshallah, today we're going to continue our discussion on the topic of the importance of reporting and recording children's behavior. Or you can refer this topic on your manual, page 49 until 50. So, what are among the importance of reporting and recording children's behavior? Right? Let us refer to note on your manual. A systematic recording of observation will enable caretakers to identify behavior patterns and allow them to see behavioral changes in a child. So, a systematic recording is different than just recording. Systematic recording means you have a plan and you have a steps and also has a system. You know when to begin and you know the process until the end. So that is the difference between systematic recording and a normal recording. So by doing a systematic recording of observation, it will give us as a caretakers, either you are teacher or you are parents or you are childminders, you're able to identify the patterns of the behavior. After you understand the pattern of the behavior, it also will allow you to see the changes in the behavior of the child. Therefore, it should be clear that the main aim for children's behavior observation is to record the pattern of behavior, understand and improve the behavioral aspect of the children. So the main objective why we are doing recording, why we are doing reporting is at the end of the observation, we want to see an improvement. So before we able to do improvement, to plan for improvement of the behavior, we need to understand. In order to get a real understanding of the behavior of the children, we need to record the observation. If we didn't record, what could we expect? We might lose some important information. We might overlook some of the important information if we are not record. So by doing a recording, we are able to rewind or look at the behavior again and over again. So that is the first paragraph. Second paragraph, a careful observation is useful as the changes in behavior might have physical cause, such as the onset of illness, or it might be an emotional response to family problems or changes. So careful observation, by doing an observation carefully, it helps. It helps us to see whether they have a physical cause, such as illnesses on the children's, either it is genetically illnesses, or it a cause of external factors such as family problems or emotional response towards surroundings. Surrounding could be family members, specifically could be siblings, could be relative, peoples around them, or maybe colleagues who are dealing with them directly. So by doing observation carefully, carefully means you being thoroughly, and you are not only observing but you are analyzing. So by doing that kind of observation, you will be able to see the changes, all right, the changes of the behavior and you're able to identify the cause. Either the cause of that changes of the behavior is due to internal cause or external cause. External cause refer to the surroundings, right? The social interaction. Internal cause, it refers to illnesses within the children's or genetically illnesses which inborn within the children's. Okay, paragraph number 3. Nursery childminders need to understand that all children are individuals with unique personality and characteristics. Children will behave differently in any given situation. Through detailed observation and proper records, we will be able to predict and respond to the behavior effectively. So, for childminders or caretakers in the nursery, for example, they need to understand that children are not the same, even though they are at the same age. We couldn't generalize. We couldn't assume that all children are the same. Yes, they might have similarities in certain area, but in terms of behavior, they will have differences, especially on their personality as well as their characteristic. So due to their difference of personality as well as their difference of characteristic as a children, they might act or they might behave differently in a different situation. So, by doing a specific observation thoroughly on specific children with a proper record, we will be able to predict, make an future assumption, the response that the children will show, and that will help us to correct or to make an intervention plan in order to change the behavior of the children more effective. All right. Here are the purpose of behavior observation. What are the purpose? What are the main objective we are doing observation? So number 1, the purpose or the objective is to identify the behavior of the children. The first is we want to identify. We want to know. We would want to be in a state of assuming without thorough observation, without detailed observation. We would want to be in a state of assume and labeling. We want to have a concrete information close to significant. We want to identify the behavior, number 1. That's the main objective. Number 2 is to determine the cause of the behavior. If they have more than one causes, one factors or 2 factors or 3 factors, we want to know what are the factors that make that children's change on that behavior. So that factors or the causes, not only internal causes, but it also includes surrounding or external factors. So that is the objective or purpose number 2. And the purpose of we doing observation, number 3, is to understand the behavior. When we understand the behavior, we will be able to respond, and moreover, we are able to predict the next step of the behavior of the children. After we understand The next objective is to modify the behavior if it is necessary. We want to change. Modifications refer to change the behavior from negative to positive, from bad to good behavior. So that is the main objective. So in order to achieve that objective, to change the behavior of the children from bad to good, from negative to positive, we need to understand first, right? Before we're able to modify, we need to understand. Before we're able to understand, we need to determine what are the causes, what are the reason behind that bad behavior. And before we're able to identify or determine the cause, we need to identify what type of behavior which is annoying, what type of behavior which is negative, what type of behavior which are not good, which is not favor, which is breaking the rules and regulation, which is not in favor of the teachers or childminders or caretakers. So by identifying specific behavior, then we will be able to determine the cause. What actually the fact is, what makes that children shouting, for example, what makes that children's tantrum, for example, what makes that child become hyper, for example. So we know the cause. After we know the cause, then we are able to understand what will happen now and what will happen next. That's through our prediction. And then if we have that kind of understanding, then we will be able to change or modify that behavior from bad to good, from negative to positive. Okay, so that is the purposes of behavior observation. So relate with your assignment. For example, doing an observation to change the behavior of the children which is bad, to understand, to analyze, to identify, and then to change, to modify, or to have an intervention program to change into good behavior. Okay, next is standard requirement in carrying out behavioral observation. What are the standard requirement? So there are 3 standard requirements in carrying out behavioral observation. Number 1 is supervision in the placement. Right? Supervision in the placement means supervise in the place, the location that children's exist, or children's in that particular place. And number 2 is involving parents or caregiver. And number 3 is make sure that the observation is valid. Okay, so this is the standard requirement in carrying out behavioral observation. So it kind of SOP, similar to SOP. SOP stand for standard of procedure. This is standard of requirement. Means if you miss any of these steps, means you are not following the standard. You are not reach the standard of observation. So let us go one by one. What is supervision in the placement? Right. If you are practical students, your lecturer will guide you to prepare the report of your observation. Right? If you're a practical student. So normally practical student is those who are in last semester, final semester, or second last semester. However, it is important to know that there are several requirements to be met before conducting that observation. Of course. So what are those requirements? Number one, supervision in placement. So what are these supervision in placement? As a practical student, you will be guided by a supervisor who is responsible too. So before you do a um, practical in kindergarten, you will have a supervisor to guide you to ensure that you are doing the supervision correctly based on the standard. So number one, so what are the guidance by the supervisor? Number one is explaining the ethical, technical, and ethical issues in conducting a reporting observation. So while you are doing your observation, so after you got your placement, for example, you've been placed, you've been accepted to do your practical in Tadika Kemas Taman Koperasi Polis, for example. So that's going to be your placement for your practicals. So you will know who's your supervisor. The supervisor normally will be your lecturer. So lecturer will guide you. So number one, she or he will explain the ethical, the technical, issues in conducting and reporting observation. Number two, introducing you into the placement, example nursery or kindergarten routine, and making you aware of the timetabling of events daily and weekly. So you will be introduced to the place, and then you will be introduced to the routine, right? And you will know the timetable, the schedule, daily schedule. So you will be on standard, on par, means you're not behind of the schedule or routine activities. Number three, supervisor will give you opportunity to get to know the children and give you time to answer any questions you might have about the children's. Okay, and then number four, setting the time for observation and ensure that the observation is not distracting the routine. So you need to the supervisor will help you out in setting the time for observation. Teacher also will help you to set the timetable in order for you to able to do the observation in a right time. So means you're not distracting the routine, you're not distracting during the meal time, you're not distracting during the important event. So you will be able to conduct the observation rightly. And the last part is reading your observation and signing that they are true account of what took place, not based on your imagination or opinion. Okay, so this is the placement, supervision in the placement. Maknanya supervision ni apa? Lawatan ataupun guideline yang akan dilakukan di tempat you practical nanti. Okay, that is the requirement number one. Mesti ada supervision in your placement. And then number two is involving parents or caregiver. Mesti melibatkan ibu bapa kanak-kanak yang hendak diobserve dan juga guru yang hendak yang terlibat dalam kelas tersebut. Caregiver or parent must be informed prior to writing observation about the children. So there must be a writing, a memo or letter that you write then you submit, you send to the parents or to the teacher or the caregiver about the children. And then the content of the report is governed by the rules of confidentiality. So it must be private and confidential. You cannot expose the information of that particular children's to anybody, to your friends, simply to anybody that you want to share. So because of you are making observation for particular children's, so there might be, all right, something regarding that children which is not which is not good to be shared with others. So that's why any information related to that particular observation need to be confidential. Okay, need to be private. You may share this observation with them and have some discussion with them to understand the child better. So the reason why you are involving the parents is you will be able to communicate with them, to have a discussion with the caregiver in order to get a more understanding related to the problems. A specific permission must be sorted out before taking photograph or using any materials. If you want to take any picture, and make sure that you got a permission. You cannot simply take picture hiddenly, all right, and expose in your social media without proper permission, because you are involving others people children. So when you are involving with other people's children, you need to be careful and aware of the privacy and confidentiality. So that's why number 2, the requirement, you need to involve them and they need to be well informed and you need to get a permission. If they didn't give a permission, you need to stop and ask for another children's. And if you want to take a photo for your additional reference for your reporting, you need to ask a permission. So that's number 2. Number 3, make sure that the observation is valid. So how to make sure that the observation is valid, not void, is an observation is agreeable to everybody who involved in the observation, including the children, teachers, parents, and other staff. To make an observation to be valid, the observer must avoid unwanted factors such as behavior faking, child awkwardness, and conditioned behavior. Right? So how to do that? This is among the tips. Remain uninvolved. Right? If the more you involve, that will become invalid. Okay. Number 2, avoid eye contact with the children. Number 3, be discreet. So this is among the tips that you can do, right, in order to avoid unwanted outcomes. Of course, at the end of the day, at the end of the story, you want that observation to be valid. If it is not valid, it's going to be a waste of time. You spend your time observing, but at the end, that observation is not valid. So in order to make it valid, so you have to make sure that the behavior of the children is real, it's not fake. So if you ask the parents or ask the teachers, they also will acknowledge the observation done by you is real. That is the true color of the children's. If the children's change the behavior due to your observation, so means that observation is invalid, cannot be used anymore, because children's behavior is fake. Number two, you have to avoid child awkwardness. If the child feel awkward, the child is not behaving on their real characters, so the observation will be not valid. And the last part is, make sure that the behavior is not conditioned behavior. Means you are not planned, you are not they are not being they are not being forced to do such behavior. So if you're able to avoid this behavioral faking, the awkwardness and the conditioned behavior, so that will ensure that your observation is valid. So by having a valid observation, then the report and the recording can be used for your practical observation, and the information will be useful, and the result will be significant for you to write an hypothesis, or for you to achieve the objective of doing observation. Okay, so let us recap the standard requirement in carrying out observation for behavior of the children. Number one, supervision in the placement. You must have a placement, place whereby children was there, and then you will be able to conduct the observation on that particular place where children exist over there. Number two is, make sure that you involve the parents or caregiver. You must get the consent from the parents or caregiver. Informed consent. All right, and then make sure that any content or information related to your observation, keep confidential. Right? You cannot simply expose that information to anybody. And the last part is, make sure that the observation is valid. Okay, how to make sure that the observation is valid? You must avoid the fake behavior of the children's, and then the awkwardness of the children's, and of course the behavior is not being conditioned, is not being controlled or being planned by anybody. Let the children show their true colors, their true behavior, their real personality and characters. Whether you are exist or you doesn't exist, whether you are doing observation or not doing observation, the characters or the behavior of the children is the same. Then you will be able to show your observation is valid. Okay, so there are two topic that we discussed today: the standard requirement in carrying out behavioral observation, and the importance of reporting and recording children's behavior. And we also want to understand the main objective why we are doing observation, and why it is important to conduct a natural observation, not planned. Being not natural, you will not be able to get a natural result. So if you're unable to get a natural result, you won't be able to change or modify the behavior. So make sure you understand the objective. Number one is to identify, determine the cause, understanding the behavior, and at the end we'll be able to change or modify the behavior. I think that's all. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.